everybody. Welcome back to Load the Box. I am out of the basement. I'm moving up. I'm back in my office, and if you recall from, I think the preseason episodes, it's the same room, just twisted. I'm on a different wall now. It's crazy. Everything's changing. Speaking of things that are changing, Jack, how about a new head coach? We said we were gonna get right into it. We said we were gonna get right to the pardon my French. I'm a little frustrated. Right into the bitching. Jack, I'm gonna kick it off to you. You had a bad week because the Vikings gave the Lions probably the only win of the entire season. What do you got for me this week, man?
Yeah, it was frustrating, but at the same time, like I think you and I are both in a similar boat, and I think a lot of Vikings fans across Minnesota are in a very similar boat that they're not surprised. As frustrating and as awful of a loss that it is, it didn't come as a surprise because we saw this. It was a disastrous game against the Lions at home. We saw a disastrous game against the Lions at home. And now you go to Detroit, a team that is hungry for their first win. Actually looks like they want to be on a football field. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. These guys look like they want to be here. The Vikings didn't. It was just frustrating to watch. Yet another game-winning drive or 2-minute drive, if you will. If you haven't seen the stat by now, that the Vikings have given up an absurd amount. They broke their record from 2020, actually, in 2021, with the amount of points they've given up in the final 2 minutes of a half. It's mind-blowing. I don't get it. The Vikings have a defensive-minded head coach that is supposed to be good at like game planning for these situations, and it hasn't shown. And I'm not saying the offense gets this like free card either, because the offense wasn't fantastic. They didn't play well until the second half. It was ugly in the first half. The only bright spot for this team, and I'm going to sound like I'm just beating a dead horse here because it's the only thing that I've talked about over the last couple months, it feels like, is Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is slowly emerging to be probably a top 2, top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. Last year we were talking about, hey, he's a top rookie. Where can you rank him? Talking about the argument between Keenan Allen, all that fun stuff. Get that out of your head. Justin Jefferson is a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, and that has been extremely entertaining to watch. It's really been the only silver lining, if you will, for this team. Outside of that, I don't even know what direction I want this team to go. You say new head coach. I think I'm on board with that, but does that go further? Does that dip into a Rick Spielman potentially being let go? And if those two get let go, is it going to be a trifecta? And then are you out on Kirk Cousins? It's going to be really something to monitor over the next couple of weeks. If the Vikings lose to Pittsburgh tomorrow night, I don't think I'd be shocked. I've been saying this all year. I don't think I'm going to be shocked if I wake up and see, hey, Mike Zimmer has officially been terminated on Friday morning. I'm not going to be surprised if that does happen. Maybe they let him coach throughout the rest of the season, see if he can fight and scratch this team back into the playoffs. It's not a hard schedule, but they just lost to the 0-10-1 Detroit Lions. So I'm done talking about hard opponents, easy opponents. Every single game that this Minnesota Vikings, the 2021 Minnesota Vikings plays, it's going to be a close matchup. They're going to play down to their competition or they're going to play up to their competition. I know there's injuries. There's injuries across the National Football League. Every team is dealing with injuries. The Baltimore Ravens probably have more injuries than the Vikings. Look where they're at. I know I think they fell down a little bit now, and Lamar Jackson hasn't been playing great, but they've had more injuries and they're doing more with less than the Minnesota Vikings. And at this point, I think the only answer is, as hard as this is for me to say, as a Kirk Cousins believer, as a former Mike Zimmer believer, still a Rick Spielman believer, there has to be some sort of shakeup within that front office. And I think that starts with the head coaching position. And whenever the new head coach comes in, that's when you kind of sit down, you readdress and say, hey, is Kirk Cousins going to be your guy? If the answer is no to that question, I think a bigger rebuild is coming for this franchise. And I know that might not be a thing that half this fan base wants to hear, because there are a lot of believers still in Kirk Cousins. He's playing a pretty flawless season so far. I know he's had the San Fran game was kind of a dud. He's laid a couple duds. He's had a couple. Wow. I think he's totaled 3 interceptions on the seasons. The stats are always going to be there with Kirk Cousins, but at the end of the day, this is not a winning football team right now, and it just seems like it's going downhill faster and faster each week.
Yeah, to me, it seems like, and Eric Minko's in the chat. He says, I honestly feel bad for you guys. This is, of course, Minko from Load the Box Browns. He watched a little bit of the final drive. It didn't look good, and there's just too much talent on the roster. And I 100% agree with that, Jack. I know you do as well. I think every Vikings fan in the fandom that has watched a game this season agrees. Specifically, that game on Sunday agrees. There's too much talent. I get we're banged up. There's still you cannot. You just can't. You can't be down 2 possessions to the Detroit Lions, the winless Detroit Lions. It's unacceptable. It's truly unacceptable, and I don't know how there's one reason Mike Zimmer kept his job. He lost to the winless Lions the same week that we're going in to play on Thursday Night Football. If we played on Sunday night, or on Sunday, or on Monday, Mike Zimmer would not have a job. I almost guarantee it. I had talked earlier in the season about how this defensive-minded guy talked Ziggy Wilf into opening up the checkbook, signing big-name guys, Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, yada, 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 what's his name? Johnson boy, the corner whose name, Bashad Breeland. Yeah, Johnson Breeland. You bring all these guys in, and the defense is terrible. Even when they're healthy, they're terrible. It's not a good defensive unit. They're still, even with all the guys out there, they're ranking in the low 20s. And it comes down to me, and we're going to talk about this going into the Pittsburgh game a little bit as well. It comes down to a lack of creativity from an old, washed up, has-been defensive-minded coach in Mike Zimmer. He has no creativity on either side of the ball at this point. His big creative thing was the double A gap look. Well, guess what? It's figured out. People know what to do against it. They know how to run it. They know how to, read your defense a little better. And I feel bad for guys like Adam Thielen, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks. I'm not going to say Danielle Hunter because he's still very young, but these guys that are pushing into their 30s, that it's like, all right, well, I'm going to be on the downtread on my career, potentially rebuilding with the Minnesota Vikings, who have a hitched wagon right now to Mike Zimmer. And I'm not going to put any blame on Cousins right now because I just don't think there is any. I was pretty mad at him after the San Francisco game. I'm not going to lie. But, it is what it is. He is what he is. I don't think we should extend him next year. I think it's a maybe see what happens year, and then you let him hit free agency, and hopefully you get a nice comp pick for the guy. But moving it back into that lack of creativity, and this is where it is. It's this when you lose your star piece in Danielle Hunter. When you lose a star guy, you have to win games still. Baltimore lost their best defensive back in the preseason and their best running back. Guess who's still one of the top rushing teams in the NFL? Guess who's still playing pretty solid defense week to week? Guess who's still in contention to be the number 1 seed in the AFC? It's Baltimore. It's a coach like John. Oh, is it John or Jim? Which one coaches for Baltimore?
I think it's John. I think Jim's at Michigan.
Well, the Harbaugh brother that is not at Michigan is in Baltimore, and he's coaching a team that is banged up. They just lost Marlon Humphrey. Is anybody saying that without Marlon Humphrey, who was their second best defensive back, the Ravens are falling off the face of the earth? They lost a 1-point game to Pittsburgh recently. It's a division rival game. I mean, hell, we suck and we beat the Packers. And this is the case against Mike Zimmer. He's the longest tenured coach in the NFL to not have a Super Bowl. Everybody else with that long of a tenure with a team, looking at what now, 7-8 years, all of them have either been to or won a Super Bowl with the team they're with. That's the expectation. I don't know. There are some people talking about Zimmer's going to save his job, get into the playoffs and losing to the Rams or losing to the to the Bucks. He's not. The expectation needs to stop being, we're 5-7 and we're only 1 game out of the playoffs, and if we win out and Washington just loses once, so this team loses twice, stop it, man. Stop. We need to set the bar higher, and I don't know. We'll talk more about the creativity stuff later whenever we talk about the Pittsburgh game, but my disappointment is immeasurable. And I, my day is ruined. I think that's the meme. That's the little meme of the guy eating the Popeye's chicken sandwich or whatever. But it was a rough Sunday. It really was. I really thought we were going to pull it out. And then, of course, Mike Zimmer's defense does what Mike Zimmer's defenses do, and gives up that last touchdown. But I don't know. I think I've I've been untethered and unaged long enough. Jack, if you have anything else you want to throw in at this game, I mean, I truly am just dumbfounded.
I just think we have to look at it from the perspective as you go back and you look at that 2017 team, like they were able to play. And this goes back to something that you and I talk about fairly regularly on this show, but it goes back to like there being continuity on that football team. Like it didn't always have to be, hey, Case, go out and throw for 300 plus yards and throw 3 touchdowns. You have Adam Thielen, you have Delvin Cook, or Delvin Cook was hurt, excuse me. You have Adam Thielen, you have Stephon Diggs. Go out and sling it. You have to put this team always on your back and get us to that next level. That wasn't the case. The defense played well too. And that since that 2017 season, that just hasn't been the case. This team has been trying to find that. I mean, in 2017, it was almost like you almost wanted the Vikings defense on the field last. You didn't want
Absolutely.
Case Keenum leading the team down the field, because I don't think Case Keenum was really that type of quarterback where he's going to go above and beyond and take a team to the next level. That's why they went and they got Kirk Cousins. But since they got Kirk Cousins, they've never been able to find that on the defensive side of the ball. They just cannot. They've still had some of the pieces from that 2017 season, and they get to 2019 and they make a little bit of a playoff push going down to New Orleans and winning that game, where Zimmer still seems like he has a little bit of creativity, where it's Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter playing from the inside rather than the outside. It's like, okay, maybe this team still has something. You know what? Maybe, I know a lot of people have said this already, but maybe we go back and we look at that 2019 season. I will admit, I'll say this first and foremost. I don't think the NFL works like this. Like it's not about tanking and trying to get those picks. Teams don't do that. Coaches don't go out and say, hey, we got to lose this game so we can go out and get a draft pick. But maybe that win in 2019, that one playoff win that we've had in the Kirk Cousins era, maybe that was kind of the downfall of the Mike Zimmer era. Maybe they needed to kind of hit that refresh button in 2020 after down season in 2019. And the Vikings have yet to find that. You look at Mike Zimmer's overall record, I think it's still a pretty decent record. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's like, I think it's like a winning percentage, like 560 something or something along those lines. And that's because no matter what his down years, they're 8-8. They're going to be 8-9, 9-7. And they just flutter right around 500. And like you said, that's not good enough anymore. If you're a Vikings fan and you're still sitting there, I know this side of the Vikings Twitter is out there still as well, saying, oh, they're only a game out of the playoffs. Stop it. This is not a playoff football team. And I will eat my words if this team goes on any sort of run. But right now, this is not a playoff football team. This is not a team that's going to go to Tampa Bay or go into Lambeau Field and make any sort of noise. They don't have the talent on both sides of the ball. They're banged up right now. They got Michael Pierce and Delvin Tomlinson back against Detroit. That didn't matter. The defense didn't look any better. I know not having Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr and Patrick Peterson, that's frustrating. That's hard on that defense too. Let's get those guys back and see where this season goes. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think this team, we saw that San Fran game was almost like the breaking point. Kind of expected that. I didn't think they were going to go in and kind of blow out San Fran, but you go into San Francisco, kind of that the announcers during that game are saying it feels like a playoff atmosphere, and it did, because the winning team from that game had a higher chance of going to the playoffs. And after that loss, it's like, take a step back and look at this Vikings team. I just don't think they're good enough. Then they go to Detroit and they get absolutely embarrassed. And now I'm sitting here and just laughing at the fact that we even are talking about the playoffs around this purple franchise, because it's embarrassing to me that we're talking about that, because it was that bad of a loss. This defense, that performance in Detroit, I thought, I tweeted something immediately after the game that somebody had to be held accountable, and someone's job had to be on the line for that game. And it didn't happen. I'm hoping you're kind of right about it being because it is a short week. They got to get stuff turned around. But if the Vikings lose on Thursday night, they're going to, I think they dropped all the way down to 10th now. The 10th overall pick is where they're at right now. That excites me more right now than talking about the playoffs for the Minnesota Vikings, because they need to kind of hit the refresh button. I've said that, feels like I've said that 100 times. I'm sorry if I have, but it's time. The time has come. The Mike Zimmer era has run its course. Move on from that, and whatever the next guy comes in, you give him that. If he wants to move on from Kirk Cousins, so be it. I don't think necessarily, yes, there might be a couple down years, but I don't think a rebuild, or at least a mini rebuild. There's still a ton of talent on this roster, but look at the defensive side of the ball. Patrick Peterson, 1-year deal. Bashad Breeland, 1-year deal.
That's
I think
probably
Nick
a good
Vigil's a
thing.
1-year deal.
Let's
Xavier
establish
Woods,
that.
yeah,
Let's establish
it
that
probably is
Breland
a
is a
good
good
thing.
thing, but
Yes, but still, you get what I'm saying. There's all these veterans that they brought in. It didn't work. It's time to start seeing, and I would like to see it this year. I don't think that's going to be the case, but why not? Last week you're in Detroit, a team that you should have beaten. Why is Chaz Surratt not out there when Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks are both hurt? Chaz Surratt was a 3rd-round pick. I know he's transitioned from the quarterback position. Why? I don't know. That's the type of stuff when it's like at the beginning of the year, I wasn't too worried about that because it was like, yeah, the Viking, why would he play? The Vikings went out, they got Nick Vigil. That's their base set linebacker. They have Anthony Barr, they have Eric Kendricks. But now, when both of them are hurt, and I think actually I did say Justin Jefferson was the only silver line. I think Blake Lynch had a fantastic game as well. I don't have the box score up in front of me. I think he had like 2 sacks and a turnover, possibly. I could be spacing. I can look that up here. I have it somewhere. But yeah, it's frustrating. And you look at the offensive line and Wyatt Davis, another 3rd-round pick. And at this point, people are going to hate on me for saying this, but if the Vikings do eventually lose out on playoff contention, throw Kellen Mond in the fire for 1 damn game. What's it going to hurt? You're already out of playoff contention. It's just frustrating. And I go back and forth on my opinion sometimes. I will admit that, because I think you and we both mean well when we're talking about this team. We want this team to win, but it's just so frustrating. I've been bought into the Kirk Cousins era for the last 3.5 years. I still think Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback. I'm going to say that first and foremost, so people aren't out for me after I say this. But he's not getting the job done right now. The trifecta of Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, and Kirk Cousins are not doing it anymore. And there has to be some sort of change within the near future if this franchise wants to get going upwards again instead of spiraling downwards very, very quickly.
yeah, I would argue, and this isn't. Look, I'm not gonna knock Cousins. I've done my Cousins knocking. I've pounded the table that we should move on from him plenty of times. I said he played. Like I'll give the guy credit. He plays well sometimes. He plays bad sometimes. I just think we should look for somebody that is more, consistently elite rather than elite in a 2 or 3 game stretch. Go ahead.
Yeah,
You have
and
something to say?
whether or not it doesn't even necessarily have to be consistently elite. But if you're paying a guy $45 million
Yep.
next year, where does the money come from to rebuild that defense? And if you're going to miss on draft picks and not play draft picks, then honestly, where the hell are these reinforcements going to come from? Because it didn't work this year with going out and letting Mike Zimmer sign. I mean, people, and that's another thing. There's more money tied up in this defense, I think, right now than there is on the offense with that huge cap hit at the quarterback position. I could be wrong. I thought I saw that on Twitter. Do not quote me on that, but it's frustrating. I think it's just time when you hit rebuild, you get a young quarterback in here that's not making nearly as much money, and you can build around that. There's a lot of really good pieces. The Vikings offensive line is starting to look like, hey, there's some young talent there. Maybe that can turn into something. You have the future. You have the face of this franchise already, and Justin Jefferson getting better and better, a stud wide receiver. Delvin Cook, you throw Irv Smith Jr. in there next year. But on that defensive side of the ball, man, that's where things get a little bit dicey, if you will. I mean, Danielle Hunter, they're going to have to talk about contracts with him. And if it does turn into a rebuild, does that mean you start losing out on the careers of Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks? Like, I think this franchise is in desperate need of that. And it's hard to kind of paint the picture right now because I don't know if it's going to be, hey, we're going to start from phase 0 and start from the ground up and kind of get this thing moving in the right direction, or if it is going to be what we've seen over the last 7-8 years in the Mike Zimmer era, where they're like, you know what, we have some talented guys on this roster. Let's bring in some more free agents, see what we can do in the draft, and try to go win this thing again. I don't think that's the answer. I think you have to kind of hit that reset button. But again, we've seen or hoped that this team will get to that point, turning around in the Mike Zimmer era, and it just hasn't happened since that 2017 season.
Yeah, and Chris Land is in the chat saying, you wanted Zach Wilson last year. You're damn right. Would
I
love to
still
have,
want
would
Zach
love
Wilson.
to have Zach Wilson on this team right now, just for the contract, man, because it matters. You can talk about how good a quarterback is, and at some point you get to that. I don't know. There's got to be a graph somewhere. There's a point where the graph goes up, and it's like the value of a quarterback versus his talent. And Cousins is way in the stratosphere of like way overpaid for the talent sometimes, because sometimes give
Yes.
the man his money. I mean, good lord, sometimes he looks so good, but then you look at, and Chris Land saying he's terrible, and okay, we're talking about a Jets quarterback here. Let's not act like he's got, anything to work with or anything. But it's just it's what the Chiefs did when they got Mahomes. It's hey, you're perpetually of the continue. Oh my gosh, I'm stumbling. I need to take a minute. You're consistently making the playoffs, finishing above 500, winning maybe one playoff game and then losing. You're never really that team that is gonna win it all. And you look at last year's Super Bowl. Who did everybody think was gonna be there? Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Who got there? Tampa Bay and Kansas City. At some point, it does become like, who's the best two quarterbacks in the NFL? For a lot of people's money, it's Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Oh, well, and who's Vegas putting in the Super Bowl? If you have to make bets right now, it's Tampa Bay and it's Kansas City. It's Tom Brady and it's flipping Pat Mahomes, man. They replaced Alex Smith. They traded up. They got aggressive. They got a guy who they thought was special, and they won a Super Bowl on his rookie contract because they had a roster full of people that they could afford to pay. And the Vikings can't do that with Cousins. And I don't want to make this an anti-Cousins rant. Cousins played well. He had 10 incompletions. He threw for almost 350. He had 2 touchdowns, no picks. But let's talk about this franchise as a whole and the health of it moving forward, and paying a low end top 12 quarterback to be the highest paid guy in the NFL. It's just bad business. And statistically, the Super Bowl champions show that. If your name's not Tom Brady or one of the Manning brothers, you better be on your rookie contract of taking a pay cut, because you are not winning a Super Bowl paying a quarterback that much money. Again, unless you have Manning blood, which kind of brings me into God, I'm excited for the draft, because I'm just so excited to talk about it. And for years to come, who knows, maybe the plan is the Vikings are going to be bad for 3 years, and then Arch Manning, wherever he ends up going to school, I'm sure he's going to win natties all over the place. Maybe we can get Arch Manning. Who knows? Maybe. I don't think the Vikings have ever had the number 1 pick, and I'm already penciling him in as number 1. But I guess we should talk about Pittsburgh really quickly, and I'm going to let you do the injury report.
Yeah, we can do that. I had something else that I was going to say, but I'm trying to kind of rethink. And going back to exactly what you said about Kansas City, they were in such a similar style as the Minnesota Vikings with Alex Smith. I think you can draw a lot of comparisons to Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins. I think I'd take Kirk Cousins, I think, if I had to, straight up talent-wise. We've seen what Kirk Cousins can do, and if Kirk Cousins went out and played on his A game, that I should say first and foremost, a lot of these quarterbacks that are MVP caliber quarterbacks, they also get bailed out by their defense at times. Kirk Cousins has not had that since 2018. Yeah. This team has been led by Mike Zimmer, but whenever Kirk Cousins has that down game, the defense also seems to have a down game. And it's frustrating to see that, because you see Brady's defense for Tampa Bay last year just putting on a field day against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, getting a bunch of pressure. I know their offensive line was extremely banged up, but Tom Brady has had some very, very good defenses over time. And I think that comes from, he's also been willing to negotiate contracts to keep some guys on his teams. We haven't seen that with Kirk Cousins. We've seen Kirk Cousins say, hey, this contract is signed. I'm not renegotiating. That's a bad look for me personally. I don't want to sit here and talk about money this, money that about Kirk Cousins, but Tom Brady is a winner. He wants to be a winner. I know Tom Brady can obviously get whatever endorsement deals he wants. I don't know if Kirk Cousins can get that. Maybe he can get a deal to get that minivan fixed and he can get back in his minivan. But it's frustrating seeing that. I think where I've been, like I said, I've been that Kirk Cousins supporter, but where I'm at right now, it needs to be some sort of rebuild, and that starts, people say, well, you draft a quarterback, you don't know he's going to be better than Kirk Cousins. No shit. Excuse my French. I'm sorry, but that's a chance. Kansas City Chiefs, they didn't know that Patrick Mahomes was going to turn into Patrick Mahomes.
People thought they reached on him, Jack. They said, "What are they doing? If Patrick Mahomes out of A&M, he runs the spread offense. What are we doing in Kansas City? They won the damn Super Bowl, Jack."
They took a chance and it paid off, and it's time the Minnesota Vikings follow suit, take a chance on a quarterback. They haven't done that. The only quarterback in our lifetime is Christian Ponder, which that's not a name that we necessarily need to bring up on the show. But other than that, like Teddy Bridgewater, they traded back in the first round and snagged with, I think it was a 32nd overall pick.
Yep.
Go out and take a chance. This team, it's always like, it just seems like this team is always like, oh, well, we made the playoffs and we won a playoff game. I don't care anymore. This franchise, this state needs a Super Bowl, and this current regime is not getting that done.
The Vikings are they're really the Midwestern mom of sports franchises. They're like, oh, that's okay, honey. You won a playoff game, but then you got blown out by the Eagles 38-7. That's okay. That's okay. We'll sign Kirk Cousins. I'm not trying to do a full-on Minnesota accent, but like, it kind of fits. They're like, that's all right. That's okay. I'm sick of it. I want to win a damn Super Bowl. I'm gonna die someday. I don't want to die without seeing the Vikings win a Super Bowl. I don't know, man. It gets very big. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we got to talk about this game a little, and I don't want to go too long tonight, but talking about the creativity before you get into the injury reports, the offensive line, I'm so angry. They're still putting Udo out there, and look, earlier in the season, I started saying, you can't spell O-line without Ollie. And it was a great little saying. And then he started sucking. It's over. The Ollie Udo experiment is over. Maybe he's a serviceable backup, that can swing around. Go ahead.
I will say the Ollie Udo experiment at left tackle should have been over about 5 minutes into that game. What that decision right there, you take a right guard that has been struggling with penalties, struggling with whoever knows what. He hasn't been playing good. And hey, you know what? Let's move him to the hardest position to play on the offensive line. Protect this $45 million next year's Kirk Cousins contract, but whatever his deal is this year, $35 million. Hey, let's put our struggling offensive lineman at the most important position along that offensive line to protect our $35 million franchise quarterback. And you know what? Surprise, surprise, it did not go well.
It's not a terrible idea, though, if you're wanting to just protect him. I mean, he's going to hold guys and not let him get to the quarterback. Like, he's not going to let Cousins get hit. He's just going to cost the offense 120 yards in a game to do so. But Udo's probably going to start at left tackle. Okay, O'Neal at right tackle, that's good. Cleveland is on the offensive line, that's good. Mason Cole's going to be out there, that's good. Why are we not moving Cleveland over to left tackle? The position he played in college. I get it's a difficult transition. Move him over to left tackle. And then, if only we had some rookie that was really physical and really violent, waiting in the wings, that almost every draft expert had going in the first round until he hurt his knee at Ohio State. Why is Wyatt Davis not getting a shot to come in and play on this offensive line, especially with how banged up it is? And that's the lack of creativity that is costing Mike Zimmer his job every week. He will not experiment because he has to play it safe. He has to play it by the book and without any thinking outside the box, because he knows his job's on the line, and he is playing, I'm trying to think of a more appropriate word than the one that's coming to mind. He's playing very conservative. We'll just go with that. Very conservative coaching style, and it's going to cost him his job, because spoiler alert, I don't think we're beating the Pittsburgh Steelers tomorrow night. I truly do not, and it breaks my heart, because we're going to get swept by the AFC North. And that's like, I don't know, I live in Ohio, so that's like a big thing to me. We're supposed to beat somebody to have a little bit of bragging rights. We were supposed to
the Vikings just lost to the Detroit Lions.
Well, yeah,
so at this point, if they can lose out, and I'm not going to bat an eye, it's not going to surprise me.
But you know what's crazy? We lost to the Lions, and if we end up going 5-12 this season, I don't think one Vikings fan is going to be like, I couldn't have imagined we would do that after the Lions game. But if we end up going like 9-8 or 10-7, I would truly be like, well, yeah, if you're winning and losing every game by 2 points, if you just sit there and flip a coin 10 times, you're not going to get 5 heads, 5 tails. You're going to get like 7 heads, 3 tails. Like, maybe if every game is a coin flip to the Vikings, maybe we get a little hot streak winning some games. I don't know. It's insane to me. But going into the game, just giving my quick breakdown, you got to stop Najee Harris, which is a problem because the defense hasn't been good. And Jack, we'll get into the injury report. I don't know the status of the linebackers, but especially if Kendricks and Barr are still going to be potentially unavailable. Obviously, no Danielle Hunter, no Everson Griffin. It's really going to be up to those linebackers and the big beefy boys in the middle to stop Najee Harris. It also comes down to Bashad Breeland and Chris Boyd or Cameron Tiny Dantzler. They've got to make tackles on the outside because they love swinging the ball to him on little quick swings, halfback screens. They get the ball in his hands, and he's dangerous. I know how dangerous he is. He's on my fantasy team, and he's been one of my best players. He's legitimately a weapon. I just don't see a way the Vikings come out with this one unless they really get it together and they hammer home we have to stop Najee Harris to stop this offense. If we can stop Najee, I think we have a good chance of, Big Ben not throwing the ball particularly well, maybe getting a couple underthrown turnovers, and then the offense is going to struggle with that defense. But, maybe a little bit of primetime magic from Kirk Cousins. But, Jack, go ahead. Let's get into the injury report for this game. Tell me who's looking like they're in and who's looking like they're out.
Yeah, one more quick thing before I dive into this. I'll just kind of bleed them together here. But we sit here, and I've been guilty of this too, talking about, hey, the Vikings should have won in Cincinnati, and hey, they should have won in Arizona. Yeah, that's probably true. They could have won those games. The Vikings now should have 2 losses to the Detroit Lions. They got lucky. Kirk Cousins kind of did something that everyone said he couldn't do and didn't really get any credit for because the Lions were the Lions, and Kirk Cousins drove the Vikings right down the field, and Greg Joseph actually made a field goal. If Greg Joseph would have missed that field goal instead of the Arizona game, we'd still be sitting in the same boat. If it's football, that's how things work. The football gods work in mysterious ways. But this team, talking about this team and saying, hey, they should have a couple more wins, they should be above 500. I'm over that narrative because after watching this Detroit game, it goes back to the first Detroit game. It's like, you guys very easily could have gotten the Detroit Lions to have 2 wins, and it'd be both against the Minnesota Vikings, which would be even more embarrassing than what it is already. So I'll put that game in the rearview mirror. We'll try to look ahead, and I'm already sitting here, and I'm like, Jordan, let's just skip ahead, and we'll plug in the draftnetwork.com right now, and we start doing mock drafts. But
by the way, if you didn't, no game balls for that game. Nobody gets anything. I don't think anybody deserves anything except for maybe Greg Joseph, because we might as well, if we're going to lose to the Lions. Greg Joseph had a pretty good game, didn't he? Good special teams.
We might as well jinx the special teams. I committed at the beginning of the season that I would never say that again. After a couple weeks into the season, I said I'm not.
Well, then we lost to the 0-10-1 Lions. Something's got to give. We got to try something crazy. I mean, stop doing rain dances or something. Something crazy's got to happen, man.
Yeah, so here's the injury report for the Vikings. They are getting some reinforcements. Dalvin Cook is questionable. That doesn't seem very realistic that he's going to play. I don't know if this is a game where you hurry him back, especially if you are Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman, and you guys, honest to God, think that there's some sort of playoff push to be had with this team. If that's the case, go out and prove it to me tomorrow night. I'm not bought in. I think most of the Vikings fan base is no longer bought in. But Dalvin Cook is questionable. Adam Thielen is out. Blake Lynch is questionable. Christian Darrisaw is out. Cameron Bynum is questionable. They get Patrick Peterson, Eric Kendricks, and Anthony Barr back this week, which should be huge in theory for that defense that's been struggling. But again, it remains to be seen. Go out there and prove it. For the Steelers, Joe Hayden is out. BJ Finley is out, and Isaiah Buggs is out. It looks like they're a little bit more healthy. Ben Roethlisberger didn't practice he's got a pec right shoulder injury, but he didn't practice Monday. Was a full participant Tuesday and Wednesday. Looks like, I'm assuming some of these are almost veteran days off because Chase Claypool got Monday off as well. But they seem like they are pretty healthy for the most part. And yeah, we can just kind of jump right in this. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this game because we just vented for the last 40, 45 minutes, whatever it's been, talking about a game that most Vikings fans probably don't even want to hear about. So Yeah, Najee Harris, stopping him is the obvious answer. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger still somehow playing. I think it was leaked last week or 2 weeks ago that it's sounding more and more likely that this is going to be his final season playing, which I think is probably a year too much already at this point if you watch any of their games. But I do want to say this too. I mean, Chase Claypool was kind of a surprising rookie. I think they drafted him out of Notre Dame in the second round last year. He is fun to watch, but I think Deontay Johnson is one of the most underrated wide receivers in all of football
Absolutely.
right now. I've had him back-to-back years in fantasy football, so I know after big performance, and not only big, he had a 30-point performance in standard PPR last weekend. But even his down games, it seems like he's getting like 18 to 20 points in a PPR league, which is fantastic because the guy can get like 10, 11 catches a game, which is huge, but he gets separation, and that worries me. I think he can run routes against this Vikings defense and get some separation. I think they might be able to throw a little bit, but I do think Ben Roethlisberger kind of holds that team back a little bit through the air. No disrespect to Big Ben, obviously, because he's done something twice in my lifetime already that I've never seen the team that I watch do. So that's something for him at least. But on the defensive side of the ball for Pittsburgh, Joe Hayden isn't playing, like I just said. It's gonna be fun watching Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he is one of the best safeties in the National Football League, obviously. And then TJ Watt is a freak pass rusher for this team. And Devin Bush is another guy that I liked coming out of college. It'll be fun. We don't get to see the Steelers play too regularly, obviously. Play them four times. We play them once every 4 years, excuse me. So just enjoy it. It's a Thursday night game. The Vikings are going to be in all purples, and I am fully expecting another performance where the biggest storyline of the game is going to be paper airplanes floating down from the upper deck, because I don't have a lot of faith in this team. I'm sitting up here saying this. For some reason, it's not going to shock me if the Vikings go out and win this game. But at the end of the day, we've watched this team for 11 games now, 12 games now, whatever it is. I promise you this is going to be a close football game. That's all I'm going to say. They will find a way to make this a close football game. And if you like close football games, enjoy it. It's going to be, I just hope it's not one of those cases, and maybe it will be, and maybe that'll be a good thing for kind of going back to what we said at the top of the show, talking about a potential rebuild. If the Vikings go out and get embarrassed on national TV on Thursday, I think there's going to be several reports all over Twitter Friday morning that somebody is actually held accountable. I'm not going to make any predictions. I think it's obvious where you'd lean towards. I think it's obviously you'd lean towards Mike Zimmer potentially losing his job. But if the Vikings go out and lay another egg against the Steelers tomorrow night, I don't think it's going to be pretty, and I think there is going to be some change within that front office.
Absolutely. It really, like you said, it's going to be a close game. I think the main thing, because I like to gamble, I like to talk about gambling and everything. To me, the most interesting bet that I have yet to be able to find is, just exactly like what is the ratio to Vikings fans to Steelers fans? Because I think it's gonna be I think there's gonna be more Steelers fans in U.S. Bank Stadium than there are Vikings fans. And that's got to be heartbreaking for a Vikings fan to know that you're going to be outnumbered. You're going to be, we in 2017, I remember we played the football team now, and they were doing skull chants, and Keenum was loving it. We beat the football team, and their fans started leaving, our fans stayed, and it was this really cool moment where it was like, hey, we're halfway across the country playing in Washington D.C. and we got Vikings fans doing skull claps and going crazy because they travel to support their team. And we're gonna be on the receiving end of that on Sunday night. I really think on Thursday night we really are, and that's gonna be the most interesting thing for me to watch. Like you said, it's gonna be close. I'm sure the Vikings offense will probably come out hot and then slow down. It seems like that's their MO. I know they did the opposite this week against Detroit. They started really slow and then got hot. I'm sure this week they'll go up. They'll probably go up 10 points and then blow the lead and then get the ball back late and you know the drill by now, because I decided to say something good about Greg Joseph. He's gonna miss a kick to lose us the game. It's just how it goes. But honestly, keep dropping us in the draft position because I don't think this team's doing anything in the playoffs. But I'm I'm trying to think. I guess we can do game balls. I don't know who has what. I'll let you pick what you want to do.
I'll just do offense, and I'm gonna be lazy. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna be lazy. I'm gonna do something different because there's no Adam Thielen. I'm gonna give it to KJ Osborne. I was gonna say Justin Jefferson because that's the obvious answer, and I said earlier he's really the only bright spot on this team right now. But I'll take the offense, and because Thielen is ruled out, KJ Osborne stepping into that wide receiver 2 role. I'm excited. I know we got to see that in Detroit, but I want to see him get the ball in his hands a little bit more than he did in Detroit, because that could be a potential combination down the road when Adam Thielen does start to. I mean, we were told like 2 years ago he was supposed to be aging and he wouldn't be able to play very well anymore. That's clearly not the case yet, but down the road, a couple years down the road, that could possibly be the 1-2 punch with Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne if the progress continues to go in the right direction for Osborne. So I'm excited to see what he can do tomorrow. Give me KJ Osborne at least finding the end zone one time. I'm not saying he's going to necessarily compete statistically with Justin Jefferson. I don't know if that's really easy to do at the current pace that he's going at, but I know Justin Jefferson is actually, I don't know if it's this game. I think there's a certain amount. I think it's 100 plus some yards that he needs to get to be the most prolific wide receiver through your first 2 seasons in the NFL. Another record that he'd be passing Randy Moss. Actually, he might have passed Randy Moss, or he's getting close. And then finally passing the guy who leads in that category, his LSU alma mater buddy in Odell Beckham Jr. So that'll be something worth monitoring. At least we can kind of hang the banner. That's been something going along on Twitter. If you haven't seen the Packers tweet, we don't need to get into that, but we can hang the banner. We can hang our heads high because you know what? Justin Jefferson's having a wonderful first couple seasons in the league. But yeah, give me sorry for the long rant and I had to bring Justin Jefferson up somehow, but I'm going to give my game ball to KJ Osborne. Let's see him kind of put on a field day, hopefully. I hope they kind of open up this offense, especially if Dalvin Cook doesn't play. I know Alexander Madison is a fine back. Another thing, get Keeney Nwangwu the ball a little bit more. I'd like to see him. I know there's people kind of bashing him on Twitter where there was that jet sweep that he ran to the right-hand side. There was a cutback lane that he completely missed, which is fine. He was at Iowa State. He didn't get the ball very often. I think it's something to be patient with. The Vikings drafted him as like this athletic freak. That's what he is, but let's just get him the ball in space a little bit more and let's see where that can go. But yeah, KJ Osborne gets my game ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to lean on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to go with Blake Lynch. Big Red.
Is he going to play though now? Because Kendricks and Barr are back?
Hang on. James Lynch, not Blake Lynch.
James
Lynch. Yes, the defensive tackle, or pass rush or whatever. I jokingly refer to him when I'm watching the game as Big Red, because he's big guy, red hair. Joke writes itself. And so he hasn't looked great. It seems like every time he gets his hands on somebody, he just can't seem to finish the play and make that big tackle for loss, or get that sack. I'm throwing a name out there that I know I'll go nuts if he has a big game because it's Big Red. So hopefully he can do well. Overall though, I don't know who else to pick on this defense to do it because it just seems like nobody's playing extraordinary and everybody's dinged up. So hopefully the reinforcements come in, next week with the mini bye here from the Thursday night game to next week's Sunday game. But it'll be interesting for sure. I'm going Blake Lynch. You're going KJ Osborne. For score predictions, I'm going Steelers 29, Vikings 27. Vikings fall to 5-8 now. I think that would make us. Yeah, 5-8. That would make us. And then Mike Zimmer gets fired Friday morning. Andre Patterson gets promoted to head coach, and wouldn't be mad if Andre Patterson ended up getting us to like 8-9 or gets us 2 or 3 wins to end the season. Might not be mad if we keep him on as the head coach. It would be sketchy, but I don't know. I'm not in love with. I still like Bieniemy, but he scales me. So I don't know. We'll see who the head coaching candidates are, but nobody makes me want like that has to be the new head coach right there. So maybe a year of Andre Patterson while we let Cousins finish out his contract and we get a good draft pick wouldn't be a bad idea. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Jack, what's your score prediction? And then, we can get out of here.
Yeah, do you just want me to take it from here? I don't really have any big
I think I'm
speech or
good.
anything.
Oh, make sure you follow the show at LTB Vikings. It's been running on the ticker the whole show, so you should know by now where you can find us. At Jack_Day on that side, at JHawthorne16 right there. Although I don't think I've tweeted from this account in forever. I need to just make that at LTB Vikings. I only use Twitter for the Vikings. That's really all I care about to get on social media for anymore. But yeah, I've been Jordan Hawthorne. Thanks for tuning in, Jack. Go ahead, score prediction, and then bring us home.
Yeah, I don't have. Normally, I go off and have like a couple-minute speech. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't know if this team is quite deserving of some sort of pump-up speech because, quite frankly, I think you and I are both in a similar boat where we've been drawn to sleep a couple times watching this team a couple times already this year. I agree with you. I don't think the Vikings are going to come out on top now that we're both picking them to lose. They're going to win for some random reason, and they're going to try to pull the heartstrings of this fan base back in. That's what they do. They're the Minnesota Vikings. If you didn't know that just from this 2021 season, go back and watch the last, whatever it is, 80 plus, or was 61 they became a franchise. You do the math. I just almost said 80 something. I am horrific at math. Don't count me on that. But 60 years would be more applicable. But the Vikings, I don't think they get it done. I think they're too far down in the dumps. And I think the Vikings lose this one. It's going to be close because that's how all their games are. But I have the Vikings losing 23-21. And I agree with you. I think if they do lose this game at home in front of a sold out crowd, I think the Wilfs will be in attendance, obviously. And if the Wilfs see this and like they see the life literally sucked out of this fan base, I think it's going to be hard not to make some sort of coaching change that Friday morning. So I agree with you on that one. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the most fun show. I think it's been a good show. I hope you're entertained watching this, but it's not as fun when the Vikings are not winning. But bear with us because we're about couple losses away from completely switching the season over to early draft predictions and doing mock drafts every single show, which will be a lot more entertaining. We can look ahead and say, hey, this guy might help the Vikings win 13 games or 14 games down the road. It's always more fun. That's when the optimism starts to come back because there's something to look forward to rather than watching the Detroit Lions. Yes, I said that right. The Detroit Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings. Frustrating one on Sunday, but it is what it is. We're going to have to get back on our feet and watch the game tomorrow. I don't think neither of us think it's going to be very pretty. Still enjoy it. It's still the Minnesota Vikings. Still going to be a good football game, I believe. And most importantly, Skol as always.